Enculturation and pedagogy are, in the modern day, irredeemable at scale. I'm not sure if it's preferable that we seek out some kind of primitivism because it often results in functionally the same problems. So I mean, like, you can see tribal behavior. I mean, it's often very similar, even like chimpanzee behavior, sort of weird fetishistic superstitions and killing babies and all of this stuff. Like, this is not unique to human beings in any way. It's the product of all societies, essentially, all enculturation. It will inevitably curate this at some level because that's how human beings are, or like that's how, life is. That's what enculturation is. It's about, well, we'll get onto it. Most behavior children manifest is natural, meaning it's permissible in the child's mind, and if it isn't, it's the product of disciplining and therefore not readily undone by further disciplining, as conflicting instructions serve to cultivate distrust and resentment in children. So, yeah, basically, all disciplining necessarily creates some sort of neurosis about yourself, some insecurity, feeling of like that your nature is just improper. I mean, it seems pretty obvious to me, and it doesn't really matter. I would say, like, the positive reinforcement stuff is also like, it does a similar thing. I won't get into that here because it's not really that relevant, but yeah. This means that there isn't a clear way to discipline, quote, good values into children without also creating a degree of neurosis and self-suppression inside of them. Yeah, so this is how culture functions. By creating an insecurity and a sense of internal deprivation in the child, you can control their... By creating an insecurity and sense of internal deprivation in the child, you can control their behavior. And this goes beyond just disciplining. This is also like, it is disciplining, but like when your mind is expanded, I suppose. I say that it's a very like generous way of phrasing it, but your mind is expanded into more abstract realms. You're also exposed to like abstract deprivation. So, things which aren't immediately available to like your body, like your instincts. Feelings of like, I'm not intelligent enough, or I'm not strong enough, I don't look good enough, these things, like I haven't read enough, I haven't done this enough, whatever. This is not like, you're not born with these senses. This is something that you learn, and that's enculturation, right? So enculturation is just, all it is inflicting deprivation on an individual and to like push them towards a certain goal. That is literally all it is. This experience unavoidably leaves permanent distress in the individual. As such, pedagogy is necessarily harmful to the child. And it is necessarily harmful to the child. It's just like, is that justified, I guess, would be the question. Whatever benefits enculturation give to a child cannot be justified by a non-teleological moral system. This would include utilitarianism, liberalism, and other popular secular belief systems. So, this should be obvious again because, well, actually, I'll just elaborate on it further. This is because the ultimate aim of those moral systems is personal satisfaction and happiness, which are attainable only through obeisance to enculturation and through the eradication of deprivation. So yeah, like, you say happiness is the ultimate goal, but happiness is just essentially the removal of deprivation. That's what it is. It's contentment. It's the feeling of like having no, having like all of your deprivations satisfied momentarily. Like, that's what it is. That's what happiness is. Happiness is like a sort of artificial pleasure which is created by culture. And I've always experienced this as being quite a sickening thing. Happiness. It always seemed sick to me. Like there was some sort of, like there was something anemic about it. Just like it wasn't right. I'm not sure if that's a common thing, but that's how I felt anyways. This deprivation is largely given to the individual by enculturation, and therefore happiness is harder to attain. As such, if the presence of happiness and satisfaction are the chief standards by which the morality of something is judged, it is always moral not to inflict enculturation on a child. So yes, I mean, if you want to, deprivation is the absence of happiness, and so to remove deprivation is obviously the moral thing to do, and so you just never instill the deprivation in the child. That's always going to be the most sensible way. If you're just operating on a purely utilitarian platform, right? Like, that's the only thing that makes sense. Just completely abandon pedagogy and enculturation. If that's your goal. The current education system cannot justify its existence or the suffering it inflicts on children for this reason. A similar issue exists in the family in as far as sexuality and I guess bodily self-conception are concerned. Intuitive childish behaviors and experiences are shamed, and in adolescence, certain naturally arising sexual desires are suppressed. For instance, a boy inspecting his sister's genitals, or incestuous inclinations later on. So I feel like this is pretty obvious, right? You're being taught to suppress your desire based off of social enculturation for unknown benefits to you. This is obviously going to instill some sexual frustration in any family. It's kind of like inevitable. I'm not sure if like there's any way around that, because, well, I mean, I don't need to get into it, but like, that's just one example of this, and then I have another example here. So furthermore, toilet training and hygiene teach children to be ashamed of their bodies. So yeah, you're associating disgust with certain states of the body, so with, defecation, or, for if you smell after like not washing or something like this, you're being taught to be ashamed of yourself, and then also you're kind of like being taught to be ashamed of like other people as well. I mean, this isn't just an individual thing. This is also like how you view the world and everything around you, and you are like placing this foundational insecurity on people who never had it prior to that, right? Like, they just never had it. I think these things could be justified in a religious or functionally religious society, and yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure about like metaphysics and religion, but I could understand these things if that was the society we lived in. But I'm already a victim of enculturation, so it doesn't really matter if I believe in religion or not, or if I try to justify it to myself or not. I know that the enculturation which I experienced was improper and wrong, because there was never any justification that I was given for it. It was always just, this is how it is. And that's sort of sick, especially I think to tell it to a child, because I mean, it's sort of sadistic, really. It's like stop asking questions, just fuck you. I mean, you're really lambasting them for a pretty standard inclination, or like for having intuition or intelligence or anything. It's just, what's the point? However, it is impossible to justify under an allegedly materialist system, and yet this infliction continues. So yeah, now I'm wondering, like, why does this continue? If we can't justify it, why does it keep happening? Generation after generation, why is it the same thing over and over again? This inclines me to believe that our society is governed by a teleological system which excuses itself with allusions to scientific materialism. This pantomime is a lie which you are expected to accept in modern enculturation. Refusing to allow an individual to see themselves as a part of a teleological system and have... Well, yeah, sorry, hold on. I want to elaborate on this a bit. So this pantomime is the lie which you're expected to accept in the modern enculturation. Yeah, this is what you're being asked to do, essentially. It is to be unquestioning and to be stupid, um, which is like, again, it's not an issue of like, could like I could excuse a great deal of violence, or I could excuse a great deal of suffering in my life if I understood what the reason for it was, but it just seems totally arbitrary. That's the thing. You know, what is produced by the end of this is you are still like an isolated individual who is not part of this chain of being. You're still just the lone actor, but uh, you have certain expectations placed upon you to not ask questions and to sort of just be obedient and to, like, I don't know, have showers and not have sex with your sister. um, Whatever. You still have these like restrictions placed upon you, but there's no justification ever given for it. It's just like allusions to scientific materialism, like, oh well, you see evolutionary biology, and um, you see incest causes genetic defects, and it's all of this, which is um, it's none of this is a justification. It doesn't justify anything. It's just saying this is how it is. It's not saying it ought to be this way. It's saying that this is how it is. It's not saying it should be this way. You know what I mean? Like, I guess this is something people have been talking about recently, which is like is ought distinction. I mean, that is what that is. Just saying, oh, because you have an inclination this way, therefore you have to obey it. I mean, that's just not a justification, and so you have to dismiss it essentially out of hand whenever people give that to you, because it is a lie, functionally, because it doesn't justify anything in the person's mind. If they really thought it through, it wouldn't, and therefore it's a lie. It's not the real reason, right? And so that's the problem. It's this pantomime. You're kind of expected to think a certain way, behave a certain way, without any explanation as to why you are expected to, and then also you're expected to just. But the thing is, like, taking that role also means that you have inherited a whole bunch of deprivation and suffering which you did not have to go through. Like, it's just been placed upon you totally arbitrarily and without your consent. And I mean, whatever, I can accept it if there is a reason. If there is a reason, I can accept it. I can even accept, like, the cruelty of others, even if I don't believe that reason. I can understand it. There's just no way for me to understand this. There's no way at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. Refusing to allow an individual to see themselves as part of a teleological system and having entitlements whilst still exposing them to the deprivation of enculturation. Yeah, that's just like a description of modern enculturation and pedagogy and, child rearing and families and stuff like that. It's a kind of all-stick pedagogy in which you are only punished. Yes, it's just punishment. That's all it is. And you can't really understand the motives, and so you never have a clear picture of the rules either. You can get a vague sense of what the rules are, but what you quickly find is that who is punished and who's not punished and what for. I mean, it's not consistent, it's not coherent, it's just based off of, like, this kind of ant smell politics stuff. So it's really hard to justify anything about this at all. I don't know if primitivism is better. I'm not entirely certain about that. I'm not, like, exactly an anarchist. I'm kind of a I'm willing to entertain other ideas, but I can just see that the way things are now is wrong. Like, through and through, it's wrong.
Yeah.